Welcome everyone to our Tree Week webinar. Today, we are joined by Chad Niman, who's Forest Products Specialist here at the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Group in the Forestry and Natural Resources team. And Chad, in your position, you focus on forest products in a lot of different contexts. And I love this today because you might not know this if you're joining us for Tree Week. Tree Week is right before Forest Products Week, right?
That's exactly right. It's
Next
a
week
good
is Forest
transition
Products Week, so
in.
the fun continues.
Absolutely. There's so many great benefits that trees provide while they're living. This is
Mhm.
a way of acknowledging those trees and using them in a great way after their life so
Yeah,
they
and I
continue to live
I
on.
think that's so powerful as well. And thinking about how do we maximize the trees in our urban forests? We want them to be healthy, we want them to live long lives, but we also want to use them so they don't go to waste. So I'm just so excited to hear about the work that you have been doing at the University of Kentucky to improve that and give us ideas for what people might be doing in other places too. And if you're interested in, I just think this is a great connection between Tree Week and Forest Products Week next week. I know you've got events and things happening next week as well. So,
Absolutely. And
great.
so one of the great things about this project has been that it's so multidisciplinary. We've had so many different folks come together to make this program a success. And I get to talk about some of that today and share a whole broad holistic spectrum here of that.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you got any questions, feel free to put those in the chat and I will raise those after Chad's presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Crocker. Hello, everyone. So today's talk is campus woods. And so we're going to be talking about our urban forest, the canopy that is across our great campus here at the University of Kentucky, as well as all of the folks that have been partnered together to be able to manage that urban forest, as well as to make the highest use by upcycling the trees that as they come to the end of their life or they have injury or illness, that we can be able to use those in student classrooms for the benefit of those students to be able to use that material, be able to store that carbon, and be able to have nice things that are able to last around campus that help to tell this story about urban wood utilization. And so I'll go ahead and jump right in. And so this is definitely a multidisciplinary approach. And so we're trying to upcycle these fallen campus trees while being able to manage the urban canopy. And so we want to be able to provide better solutions for these fallen campus trees while providing these unique materials for our students throughout this living campus laboratory experience. And materials, what things are made out of, is one of the top 8 priority areas of the University of Kentucky. And it really, when you look at forest products and the opportunity that they provide us to reduce our environmental impact and reduce pollution, uh, while making way for succession in our forests. Materials, wood products are one of the most sustainable and best as long as we pair that with sustainable forest management. And so there's some synergistic research, teaching, and extension opportunities that have been created out of this partnership while reducing energy consumption as well as disposal and utilization by being able to process these trees on site, which is a great thing for our campus. And so we look at our urban canopy. This whole Kentucky campus has got many trees across it, and it provides us an oasis in one of our least forested areas of Kentucky. So if you look at Kentucky as a whole, nearly half of our state is in forests, but when you get into our urban areas, especially in Lexington and Louisville, we do have a lack of forest there, and our campus is one of those great oases that helps us to have a healthier environment. And that mature canopy of these diverse species, it provides a great place to be, to work, and to study across our campus. But In addition to that, we know that this urban forest helps us to cool this concrete campus and shelters us from all of the elements, the wind and all of the harsh heat in the summertime. And it provides us this protection from that urban heat sink. So just plainly, when you have these urban canopies of trees, it can reduce that temperature of the surrounding environment by about 15 to 20 degrees. And so we know that there is a great benefit in having those trees. And it's important to note that these trees across our campus are managed by UK's professional arborist crew. It wasn't always this way. And so it's a fantastic thing that over the last decade that our university has developed this campus arborist crew and really invested in maintaining this urban canopy for the future. And so we know that trees need to be removed, but they're being determined by these professionals. And so they're looking at tree health, human life, health and safety, storm damage, things of that nature when they're removing these trees. And they're doing it with the tree and the human best interest in mind. And so while many trees often live well beyond our human lifetimes, we know that no trees live forever. And so it's important to be able to have succession and have trees on the landscape continuously so that they can provide benefits to us and our environment. And we know the best way to honor these fallen trees is to utilize them in long-lived wood products where they will last for a long time, storing that carbon and hopefully have some use for us. And so we know with the reality, trees will continue to get old and sick and die, but we also have a development pressure from infrastructure improvements. And so with that, there's going to continuously be trees needing to be cut down. And so having this integrated program in place, it can serve as a model for universities and communities around the country. And so one important thing with our arborist crew is that they're working on planting of trees to try to offset those removals. And so the campus arborist crews, we know they're working hard to maintain that campus tree canopy. And they're also planting a diverse selection of these vigorous young trees across campus to try to replace those that are removed, as well as continually increase our overall campus tree canopy so that we can continually gain tree canopy as opposed to losing that urban canopy. And so they have worked with the Urban Forest Initiative, our campus arborists have, to be able to successfully inventory our campus trees with precise measurements and detailed information so that they can help manage that resource even better. And so anyone can go online and see the information that's available on the tree plotter website on University of Kentucky's website. But this just shows across our campus our urban canopy and each one of those trees. It's important to note that our University of Kentucky is a Tree Campus USA through the Arbor Day Foundation. So this was initiated back in 2011 when the university got its original designation, and they've maintained this continuously since then. And so this was originally developed in partnership with the physical plant, the campus arborists and grounds crew, the state arboretum, which is just on the edge of our campus, UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, UK Forestry Club, UK Office of Sustainability, and even involved some support from the UK President's Office. Anyone who would like to learn more about Tree Campus USA, there is a link here to be able to find that, and there's lots of information on that website. So just to look at some of these benefits that are provided by our campus urban forest, it is Tree Week, and there's so many great events going on out there, and there's so many benefits that these trees are providing while they're living. So importantly, climate stabilization and resilience. We know that they're taking up stormwater runoff and purifying water. They're reducing our flood risk. They provide soil stabilization, and they reduce that urban heat sink, as I mentioned earlier, by providing shade, carbon sequestration. And so they're also cleaning our air and removing harmful pollutants. They also provide food and shelter to birds, pollinators, and many other wildlife that we can see across our campus. And they really do add to the appearance of our campus. But we also look at these trees as a resource. We know that salvaging logs and other useful sections from these trees create opportunities and benefits for our students in the campus community. We also recognize that forest health is important in both urban and rural forests. So some of the benefits to our local campus wood utilization and upcycling is that trees that are requiring removal, they were previously ground up into mulch. And mulch is not a bad thing at all. It's a great thing. There's only so much of that that is needed. And we're also able to reduce our cost in having to transport that material to be ground up into mulch. And so from that, a discussion came together that we could upcycle some of this material for a higher use. And so large segments, we know, can be sawn into usable lumber for student use. Some of those users of this wood have been College of Fine Arts, the College of Architecture Design, College of Engineering, Martin Gatton College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, as well as the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And products made from our campus trees, what we call long-lived wood products, we know that they provide that carbon storage. And so that carbon that is in that wood, it'll stay in that wood for the life of that product. So in addition to those benefits, we know that this actually reduces real university costs. So hauling expenses, dump fees, taking it to the grinding facility to be turned to mulch. And there is lumber for coursework for students that is provided. And so there a lot of times will be course fees for students to purchase lumber for projects that they will do in different disciplines. And so this provides our unique campus wood material to them at a very reduced, if not no cost to the students, which is an enormous benefit. And so along those lines of educational opportunities, we know that UK students have the opportunity to learn solutions to urban forestry issues that municipalities across the country are faced with. And they're able to do this through this campus living laboratory. In addition to that, there's continuing education and extension work that can reach communities, companies, and people around the state and beyond to help them deal with these urban forestry issues and help to bring them closer to understanding tree health and wood as a material, which is a great benefit. So one example that we had early on was around our student center, the Gatton Student Center. We salvaged some pin oak trees that were lost due to the construction expansion of that new student center. Utilizing our University of Kentucky Robinson Wood Utilization Center and equipment and staff at Robinson Forest, we were able to saw up some of those pin oak logs, and we were able to create live edge coffee tables that were put back into that student center. And so that material was salvaged and upcycled, and then all that carbon that was stored in that wood is there in place. And these very nice tables that our students can congregate and meet and study around in the edge of our student center. In addition to that, the architecture design classes have had furniture design studios utilizing some of this campus wood, being able to make other products that can be used to help tell the story of this unique material that we have and part of the story of managing our urban canopy. So we go into our next steps with our campus woods, what we call Campus Woods 2.0, or our next steps in the wood utilization program for the university. We are going to be acquiring an iDry vacuum kiln. And so this is going to allow our students, faculty, and staff to efficiently dry campus wood on campus, which is going to greatly reduce transport time, fuel consumption, as well as other expenses in moving lumber to drying facilities. And so students are able to learn more about wood properties and drying through these exercises. And this is funding for this is provided from the Sustainability Challenge Grant as well as Coca-Cola. And so that is part of this campus wood story. But building upon that, we've got a project that has come out of this, and we've titled it Building Community Through Innovation and Sustainability of Kentucky's Forest. And with this, we've had architects, engineers, and myself in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources working on using underutilized hardwood species in cross-laminated timber panel testing. And so this did receive some funding from the Sustainability Challenge grant as well. And so I'll go over this introduction of this project, provide a little bit of the methodology and some results and conclusions, as well as some related work and future directions for this work. So generally, mass timber is a category of wood product, and it's going to allow America to revolutionize how we build. And so mass timber is comprised of multiple solid wood panels, either nailed or glued together, which provide exceptional strength and stability in our built environment. So in our schools, our offices, and other structures that we live and work in. And so hardwood cross-laminated timber is one of those forms of mass timber, and it uses dimensional lumber in orthogonal layers, as you can see in this image here. There's more information available in this design manual, as well as in thinkwood.com. And so just thinking about forest management and wood, we know that wood is our oldest and most sustainable building material when we pair it with sustainable forest management. And we have new technology and innovation in mass timber building components that are improving the health and sustainability of spaces where we live, work, learn, and recreate. And so just some of these benefits of mass timber, we know that it allows for increased forest management by creating this new market for wood, which is important for landowners who own those woods and forests out there to be able to sell their trees, be able to achieve their forest management objectives, to benefit the wildlife that's out there on their landscape, and to help with succession of those woods. And we know that carbon storage through long-lived wood products is an enormous benefit because our buildings last a very long time. And so we're able to lock up that carbon in those buildings for many, many years. One of our longest lived wood products is our structures. And we know that there are biophilic properties of wood. So we feel better when we're in a space with wood. The smell, the appearance, the natural wood, it provides these benefits to us. And we know that wood is a very insulative material. And so it reduces heating and cooling of structures that use wood in the construction. There are also benefits for prefabrication offsite. That's a big thing nowadays in the construction world, being able to have all of the parts already pre-assembled so they can be put together faster when they get to the construction site, so they can reduce the timeline of construction as well as the cost of construction. So while at the mill, CLT panels are able to be cut down to size. They can include door and window openings. All of this can be done with state-of-the-art computer numerical controlled routers, what we call CNCs. And it's capable of making these complex cuts with very high precision. And so a structure would then be erected using a crane to lift the panels into place where they can be assembled by a crew. So looking at just building construction as global carbon emissions back in 2021, we know that building construction accounts for 37% of those global CO2 emissions. And so carbon is heavily intensive in steel and concrete, and these materials will always be important in our construction, and they're very important building materials. And so we want to use those in the most critical locations of the structure so that we can reduce those emissions and environmental impact, but still using those materials, but offsetting a large majority of that with more wood in mass timber construction. And so we know that these mass timber structures have this ability to capture and store large amounts of carbon. And most of these structures are a hybrid of concrete, steel, and mass timber, which is a great thing to be able to utilize all those materials to have the best structures. Looking at the forest growth and removals across Kentucky, the growth is in the green here, and this shows our growth and drain of our Kentucky forest land. And so we're growing this enormous volume of wood here. And over here on the right, we've got the red is the natural mortality, trees that have died of old age, insects, or disease. And then we have what we remove through harvesting of timber in blue. And we can see that we have almost the same amount of volume dying from other causes as what we're removing from our forests. And the big takeaway is that we're growing twice as much as what is dying or being removed from our woods. We look at our composition of our forests. The reason we focus so heavily on hardwoods with yellow poplar and oak and other underutilized hardwood species is our forest composition. So 76% of our woods is in this oak hickory type, which is a hardwood species. And if we get looking at what is a softwood species in our forest, we know that it's less than 5% of our composition. So a study, SOAR, Shaping Our Appalachian Region, economic study that was conducted through the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, identified that there was approximately 4.9 billion in additional contribution that could come from our forests from underutilized species that exist out there. And so species like red maple, sweet gum, sycamore, beech, these kind of species, there's great opportunity with. And so we started to evaluate the structural properties that these three species, red maple, sweet gum, and sycamore, had in use with hardwood CLTs. So we received an initial $47,000 sustainability challenge grant. And with that, we conducted some initial testing of hardwood CLTs under compression with Dr. Marianne Gutierrez Soto's lab here on campus in civil engineering. We also conducted a mass timber and Appalachia symposium where we brought together folks from across the nation as well as the region, experts in this field, as well as people in all of the different disciplines, including engineering, architecture, construction, building codes, forestry. And so a great conversation that was had. We also constructed a sawmill pavilion and designed and built that with students using campus wood, which I'll show that later. And so these species that we talked about earlier in those hardwood cross-laminated timber panels have great appearance. And so sweet gum, red maple, and sycamore, you can see have great appearance for a finished product. So these panels wouldn't need to have any sheetrock or any additional coverings. This could be the exposed surface, which students and staff and faculty and visitors to our campus would be able to see inside of the building as the finish, which would be fantastic. So just to show what these small test panels look like, we constructed 3 and 5 layer panels. And so here is what they look like. And so these were put into a press for compression testing. So the small panels were tested to 100 kips capacity on this smaller press. And the larger panels we tested to 300 kips capacity on the larger press here. So this just shows the curve of one of these red maple panels. It shows the RC here is the compressive strength, and the proportional limit is here with the SPL. And then our modulus of elasticity is here. And so here we can see we have red maple, sycamore, southern yellow pine, which is not a hardwood species. This is what is one of the approved species currently in the PRG 320 standard. And so testing sweet gum here in the green, we can see that all 3 of these species in this load direction were stronger than the southern yellow pine. And this proved to be the same in this other loading direction as well. So the red maple, sycamore, and sweet gum all testing at a higher rate than the southern yellow pine. So conclusions from that study were that all three of these hardwood species that are abundant in our Appalachian region showed higher strength than two commonly used softwood species, which is southern yellow pine and Douglas fir. And the results show promising feasibility of hardwood species for structural purposes due to these species being underutilized and having limited markets. So it's an opportunity for landowners and the whole wood supply chain, as well as forest management. And the studied underutilized hardwood species, we believe, have potential to be competitive in the market and be comparable to southern yellow pine wood prices. We did publish these results from that study in the Journal of Architectural Engineering, and the title of that was Compressive Properties of Cross-Laminated Timber Panels Made of Hardwood Tree Species from the Appalachian Region. And so Alejandro Palacio Betancourt, who led that effort, a student of Dr. Marianne Gutierrez Soto, but we had many folks across the civil engineering, architecture, design, and forestry community that worked on that study and put together this manuscript. I talked briefly about this Mass Timber in Appalachia symposium that we had back in February of 2021. It was hosted by the University of Kentucky team of architects, engineer, and forestry and wood product researchers. And so this was a virtual symposium. With the timing that it occurred, we had hoped to have it in person, but due to the conditions at the time, we had this virtually through Zoom. And so we brought together these architects, engineers, business entrepreneurs, forest products experts, students, and other community members to be able to explore the possibilities and challenges of developing advanced wood products in the Appalachian region. And so this was part of that project that was funded with the Sustainability Challenge grant funds through the University of Kentucky. So this is the campus sawmill pavilion that is out at the Vaughn warehouses. And this is part of that project as well. So we engage students in their architecture and engineering design classes. They designed and reviewed to be able to meet the needs of this campus sawmill that we've got. And they built and finished the structure with assistance from faculty and staff. And we actually have a lot of campus wood that was used in the framing of this structure. So we built from there and had other opportunities that emerged from the synergy that we had going on. And in our current phase of hardwood CLT research, we've received some funding from the Kentucky Agriculture Development Fund. We received $250,000 with the purposes of testing panels constructed from underutilized hardwood species. This will allow us to create new markets for woodland owners and for industry across the state, as well as provide unique material for use in potentially schools or buildings across the state. And with that, we're also going to conduct an economic analysis, which is led by Dr. Thomas Ochudo and one of his graduate students, on underutilized hardwood species and their economic potential for hardwood CLT. So with that, we are conducting the hardwood CLT economic study. We're fabricating hardwood CLT panels, testing those to code approval, working with architects to also build a demonstration project so that we can showcase these unique materials and allow people to see the strength of these products that can be made, these building components that can be made from our local resource. So here are the current members of this hardwood CLT team, including myself, Bruce Swetnam in architecture design, Dr. Thomas Ochudo, who's a forest economist in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And we're currently redeveloping our engineering partnerships. And so we'll have a new partner on that end. I do want to briefly mention, so we've talked about our urban tree canopy, but the university has a great research extension and teaching forest in the eastern part of the state on the Cumberland Plateau called Robinson Forest. And there's been a great amount of research that's been conducted over there over many decades relating to logging and water resources and studying of these unique water resources, as well as the impacts of harvesting on endangered bat species and improving foraging habitat. There's many other wonderful studies that have been conducted at this enormous 14,800 acre research forest in eastern Kentucky. But I wanted to mention this as this ties into, at the landscape level, the other urban, so we have our urban forests, but then we have our rural forests as well. And we also have the Robinson Wood Utilization Center, which is in Breathitt County, Kentucky. It's part of the Robinson Center, which is located right along the North Fork of the Kentucky River. And so this is a facility used for industry training as well as community training with regards to forests and wood products and understanding our great natural resources in the state. And so we just recently had Win with Wood there, which is a youth competition where there's 8 competitions, 8 events, I should say, including invasive species identification, wood identification, tree ID, tree measurements, compass and pacing, and tool identification as well. And so students are able to compete in those events and learn more about their natural resources in the eastern portion and the whole state of Kentucky. Another initiative that we have going on through a collaborative team effort with the University of Kentucky Department of Forestry, through Forestry Extension, the Kentucky Division of Forestry, and the Kentucky Forest Industries Association, is a high school curriculum for students across all 120 counties of Kentucky with information specific to our forests of Kentucky. And so this will allow for education in forestry and related natural resources to be taught statewide, but also provide information to young people about jobs that go across the entire forest sector, including logging, forest management, timber procurement, sawmill, and different wood industry jobs that are available out there for folks to pursue. And with that, we're also going to have a 2-week summer camp at Robinson Forest and at the Wood Utilization Center for students to learn more about our forest resources and opportunities that exist there. So panning back out to forest products, we want to acknowledge that they improve the learning environment that we're in, and they do make our spaces much warmer and comfortable to be in. The picture on the left here is of our student center, a social staircase that's been put in for students to be able to congregate, study, and work on activities for their studies. And here to the right is in the business school, the Gatton Business School here at the University of Kentucky. They also have a social staircase there, but you can see how much warmer that the room is due to having this wood on the sides of the walls, which makes it much more comfortable and a better space to be in due to the appearance added from those natural wood products. So we know many small choices can have a positive impact. A great old saying that I grew up with is the reduce, reuse, recycle. And with our forest products, we know that they are renewable. So I add renew onto there. We know that forest products, they are able to reduce our daily impact on the environment. And so with paper, packaging products, and so you think of paper or plastic or polystyrene, styrofoam, paper has this great ability to reduce environmental impact. And so almost everything that we consume or we purchase is in some type of packaging that protects the product from damage and provides sanitation to keep that product healthy and safe for us to consume. With all of these different products out there, sustainability labels help to inform consumers of the contents, the material that that packaging is made out of. And I've got a few of these labels just to show some of those that you might see. You might be used to seeing this FSC logo. You might have seen this USDA certified bio-based product logo or Sustainable Forestry Initiative. And so just as you're looking at products and you're consuming products, it is important to look at what that material is made out of, as it helps us to reduce our impact if we have to go through a fast food place, if we're grabbing our favorite cup of ramen noodles, if it's in a paper cup compared to a styrofoam cup, or if you go to a restaurant and get a to-go box, if it's made out of a bio-based material, a plant-based material, as opposed to styrofoam or plastic, that it has a much reduced impact for our environment. And it is good to acknowledge that here in Kentucky, our paper mills, our products that are made from those paper mills come from chipping of low-grade trees through forest management activities, as well as residues from lumber production. And so it's a byproduct of making lumber. And so we do want to acknowledge that next week is Forest Products Week, and we're going to be celebrating that on campus. So Forest Products Week is October 15th through the 21st. It's always the third week in October. That was declared by Congress back in 1960, and it's been celebrated by folks on both sides of the political aisle ever since then. In Kentucky, we've had our governor proclaim that it's Forest Products Week. And so, this is bipartisan support. I want to be clear about that, because healthy, productive forests are not a political thing. We know that Kentucky's 12.4 million acres of forest that cover nearly half the state and are a renewable natural resource, with forest products industries generating a total impact of about $13.5 billion to the state's economy and employing nearly 50,000 people. And that's just in this last year. Each year, those forests provide that enormous contribution to all of us. And so we're all a huge beneficiary of that. And we know that Kentucky is one of the leading producers of hardwood forest products in the South and in the nation. And we provide these forest products throughout the world as well through exports. And so many benefits that these forests provide, including sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, reducing our net carbon emissions, while providing forest products that store carbon over their lifespan. So many wonderful things that these forest products provide to us, and we want to celebrate that. And so to do that, we kick off the week out on the front lawn of the Thomas Poe Cooper building, which is on the corner of Rose and Huglet. So Monday, October 16th from 11 to 1, we're going to be having a cookout. This is sponsored by the Kentucky Forest Industries Association, as well as the Kentucky Sustainable Forestry Initiative. So we'll have hot dogs, hamburgers, and veggie dogs. All of those are agriculture-based products. And so, whatever your choice is, we'll have those out there, as well as some water and other things to go along with it. So please come out and join us if you can on the front lawn of the Thomas Poe Cooper building to celebrate that kickoff to Forest Products Week. And that is all that I have. With that, we have some time for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chad. I really appreciate your presentation and kind of the sense of optimism that it gives me about kind of our trees and our forests and sustainability going forward. I think all of us here, if you're joining us for Tree Week, you're probably also thinking, how can I do my part to be taking care of not just the trees, but our whole planet, the environment, nature. And it's really exciting to think about this kind of under-recognized role that trees play and that we can play in helping them. So thank you for your presentation and all that you're doing. We did have a few questions in the Q&A in chat, but before I get to those, I do want to remind everyone that, we're wrapping up our Tree Week webinar series. We had a lot of really great webinars this week. And if you missed any live, don't worry, because You can find those on YouTube. In fact, all of them, but the one you just heard right now is already up on YouTube. And you can find the Tree Week webinar series with a lot of great presentations to catch up on. And then if you do have questions, I encourage you to reach out. But we really do want to hear from you on the webinar series. What did you think? Let us know your thoughts on the different webinars so that we know what to do next year. We hope to do a similar series for Tree Week next year. Give us some ideas about what you'd like to hear about, what questions you might have. So with that, I want to turn things back over to you, Chad, and
Thank you,
raise a
Ellen.
couple of the questions that came up in the chat and in the Q&A. And one of the questions that came up was about the term sustainable forest management. I think this kind of is counterintuitive to a lot of people's understanding of forestry and logging and kind of what that means. So what do we mean when we talk about sustainable forest management?
That's a fantastic question. And so a big part of sustainability is being able to continually have that forest regenerate. And so we're very fortunate in this part of the world that our woods do that on their own. And so what we're doing as foresters out there, they help the woods with succession and being able to allow space for those next trees to come in. So with sustainable forest management, one, there's trees that are on the landscape continuously. They're native species. And so those are important components to that it will continuously renew.
And I loved that point that you kind of referenced us to, in that for every new tree that's growing, or every tree that's cut down in Kentucky, you've got a couple new little trees that are taking off and growing, right? So
That's
we can grow
exactly
trees
right.
really well here. We're a good place to do that.
Absolutely.
Another question, and I think this is, curiosity about how many trees do we have on campus? And it's tricky because, as you said, not only is there the University of Kentucky campus here in Lexington, but there are lots of other satellite campuses elsewhere in the entirety of Robinson Forest, which has a lot of trees. But,
Yes.
do you have an estimate about how many are even just here on our kind of small campus location?
I have up the tree plot database, but I don't, to be really honest, I don't know that number. It's
A lot.
many, it's so many, which is a great thing.
Yeah, for sure. Um, and then, something that I thought of as you're presenting is, you hear this, people trying to be sustainable and use the best building resources possible. And I know that I've seen, and maybe those of you of watching have seen things that are like, oh, use this bamboo product, it's so sustainable, or like use, something like that. Do you want to comment on that and kind of uh, how sustainable is it to do that versus relying on our hardwoods here? Because
Very
it would
good
be great if we
question.
didn't have to cut down any trees, right? We
Right.
love trees, but can you kind of contrast those two a little bit?
We do love trees, and while we wish they would live forever, we know that they do not. And so that's where we're helping with the succession of those trees, making space for the next generation. And we're storing that carbon in long-lived wood products. And we're also reducing our impact while using those disposable products like we talked about earlier. But when we look at something like bamboo, there is some examples where it is displacing native forests in Asia, which is not a good thing. But in some of those areas where it is native bamboo area, and that is what is meant to be growing ecologically in that area, it's not a bad thing. And in Asia, it would be a great local material to utilize. Now, when you transport it halfway across the world, that environmental impact is somewhat reduced through, transportation globally. But the big thing is that we're then not managing our local forests. And we really do need to manage our forests much more. We need more markets and more opportunities to manage our local forests. And so that's
Yeah,
the
we
big
can grow
thing with
trees really
bamboo.
well here. And those are
Yes,
trees that, not only do they give us products, but they provide wildlife benefits. They have insects that have lived with them for thousands of years that, feed off of them and have these relationships. And so I think that that's really valuable to have be promoting our native species. I'll see arguments sometimes about, well, we need to bring in a big plantation of this, one tree and just grow that for carbon purposes. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, we can grow a high diversity of trees in a way that not only is economically good, not only provides, sustainability benefits, but provides us a lot of other ecosystem services. It just seems like a win-win-win.
I completely agree. And where we're in a place in the world with some of the highest tree diversity in the entire world, that is something to celebrate. And I think something we want to maintain. Having big, plantations of monoculture species, just one species, it puts us at risk for new insects and disease attacking those, as you know better than anyone. And you could tell us about that for days. But there's so many benefits that we get from these native forests for ourselves and our wildlife. And it's such an ecological treasure that we want to maintain, I believe, going forward.
Well, I feel like we need all the tools in the toolbox that we can get. And as you mentioned, there's some scenarios where one thing might make more sense and others might be better in other contexts. But I'm just really happy to have you here at the University of Kentucky doing the work that you're doing for us, and also so that other locations can be learning from that as well. So I want to thank you for your presentation today and thank everyone for joining. If you have any additional questions, feel free to pop those in the chat, and hope to catch you at a future From the Woods Today, or check us out on social media and online. If you liked this Tree Week webinar series, you're going to love our From the Woods Today and other presentations that we've got out there. So thank you so much, Chad. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Dr. Crocker, for all of your work in forest health and all the synergy that you've built around this campus and beyond to educate folks about forest health and keeping our native forests healthy.
Well, I know you agree with me when we say that trees are the answer, whatever the
Yes,
question is, right?
absolutely.